Hello, welcome back. It is week 163 on Out on That Line podcast. I'm Jeff with my co-host Alex. As always, Alex, how you doing this week?
Now I'm working. Jeff, I just sprayed seltzer everywhere just to do a bit I'm pretty sure I did done and gone and did on this show before. But it doesn't matter because today we're going to be reviewing an artist that we've done before, a friend of the pod, Tyler, the creator. And I, for one, am excited. But Jeff, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I'm also very excited to talk about Tyler, the creator, and the new album Chromakopia. Tyler, the creator, another Out on That Line alumnus. Really, yeah, we've been doing this long enough now that we're getting some alumni.
I dig it. I really like it. I think we should at some point consider starting a Hall of Fame. I think after having been around for 5 years, it's going to be time to start a Hall of Fame. Figure out the criteria, set it up.
Yeah, I think that's that might be like a listener. Yeah, we might have to have them assist us with the vote.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. There should be ballots.
Yeah. And I think, maybe there's a, live stream, a ceremony of the induction.
That'd be nice. We could all wear like little sashes and stuff.
Yeah.
Make and it like we Kennedy Center honors, some fake medals.
We'll accept all the awards on behalf of the artists.
It's going to be a busy night for us.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Casey Musgraves couldn't be here tonight, so we're going to accept this on behalf of her. Oh, spoiler alert.
God damn.
Well, Tyler, the creator, you'll have to remind me, is it Call Me If You Get Lost? Was that the previous album we did by him? Right. Yeah. So I thought that one was excellent. I mean, really, really fantastic. I think I've kind of always knew before that too, that Tyler, the creator, was looked upon as like kind of one of the premier like lyricists and voices in rap music. So, I think what he's known for is like really deep, growly, low cut voice. But it's very accessible to listen to that because it sounds gravelly, it sounds grating, but then when you really get into it, it's got a lot of, I want to say it's like well-rounded in the same way that like a great singer has like a really warm, well-rounded voice. Like it's very appealing, it's very comforting to listen to it. And then you hear the complexity of the things that he's saying. So he can give you hilarity. He can give you extreme like sadness. He can give you very poignant kind of life lessons. And he can just straight say fuck off to people. I think he's a man of many facets. And what I really liked about this album is that it's an album of many facets. You have those moments of just this really kind of aggressive style of rapping, and then you have more heartfelt moments. But even with no matter what version of that you're always getting Tyler, the creator. And it just feels to me like he's on a run of classic rap albums that people are going to look back on and like, for better or worse of who this artist is, but people look at Kanye's first like 6 albums as like all-time great albums.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as times have changed and we don't look at those things the same way, it's like I feel like we're in the moment of Tyler, the creator's career, that he's released enough quality albums now kind of in a row that he has to be looked at in the same breath as like 50 Cent when he was kind of on top of everything. When you look at like Eminem when he was on top of everything, maybe he's not doing quite as many albums sold, but that stuff's all kind of jumped up now with the way streaming is. I think when you look at the end of the day, when he's released all of his albums and he's all done, like so far, you could really put it up against anybody.
To me, I think the closest analog is Kendrick Lamar, and they're two completely different things, but this reminded me a lot of Mr. Morale and the Big Stepper, because there was, like you said, a lot of this like heartfelt material in this. For me, it was like the whole like thesis of it is about aging versus maturity, like getting older versus becoming more mature, because there's like all of this chaos and kind of like outright sloppiness to the album. And there is kind of that Tyler, the creator sense of humor, which I think encapsulated for me is like the stuff he was doing on Igor. And like around that time when they made the movie Pop Star and the Hunter the Hungry was an obvious
Yeah.
parody of Tyler the Creator. That's the thing, is he had a style, like you said, that kind of lower approach, and doing Loiter Squad. And he was just kind of like a ridiculous guy who would say some outlandish shit in his material. And a lot of that, like like playful instinct is in it, but the like actual content itself, a lot of that is melted away. Like this was funny. There was funny wordplay, but it didn't feel gimmicky. It didn't feel
Mhm.
like this album is self-serious. It didn't feel like this album doesn't give a shit. It was just kind of like some real raw, like a level of honest reflection and a lot of complexity that we'll get into song from song. And there were some songs for me that I was like, it's
Mhm.
not the most interesting perspective or story that you've told on this album, but still great. And none of that is a digression into silliness or anything like that. It's a really interesting, mature album at this point in his life. The shit he's talking about. He's talked about it in interviews, getting older, gaining weight, priorities are changing. And all of that is reflected here in some like super interesting ways.
Mhm. And what I'm, what I love is that you have a song like Hey Jane, and you also have a song like Sticky, and and they both fit on this album, which is wild. If you listen to just those two songs back to back, you'd be like, what? You'd know it was the same artist because he sounds the same. But if you listen to the content of, of Hey Jane and then the content of Sticky, and I was to tell you, you'd be like, those are two valid parts of the same album. You'd be like, what? And it's somehow because of the way he's able to put words together and make it all so engaging. Like, it honestly, the subject matter didn't matter in any of these songs. Like, they all fit the way they were supposed to. Whereas some of the issues I've had in previous rap albums we've done, like I remember the Good News album by Megan Thee Stallion. Like, I really liked it for each individual thing. I really liked all of it. But as an album, it just didn't work for me because it was a lot of just repetitive, kind of the bars on bars on bars kind of rap. There wasn't enough to like break that up, and it was kind of long, so that to me, I couldn't say any part of it was bad or not. Anything I could think of off the top of my head now. I'd have to go back and listen to what I said about it previously. But on this album, I feel like you get your kind of less serious songs, I guess, like Sticky and Judge Judy and Ratata. You get your like little bit less serious moments, but then you get the more serious ones. You get the Hey Jane, you get Tomorrow, Thought I Was Dead with Schoolboy Q. I Hope You Find Your Way Home. I mean, I feel like he does such a good job at giving his personality into the music. Like, I feel like this is such a look into his brain of all the places that things bounce around in there, and how he manages to like hone that down into delivering this music to us. The sam or the not samples, the features that he had on the album. Tizo Touchdown I never listened to before, but that song was awesome. Sticky with Glorilla, Lil Wayne, and Sexy Red. Like, had never listened to Glorilla or Sexy Red before. Glorilla, when that beat hits behind her verse, unbelievable moment in the album. Just absolutely
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. And I think that's probably the single from this album so far, from what I understand. I think was that the same drum beat from that Lil Mama song, Lip Gloss?
Maybe, I don't know off the top of my head. I didn't pick up on that.
It was at least made on the same machine. Like, it was the same sounds. I don't know if it was the same exact beat, but that's the feeling it gave me when it kicked on. I was like, oh, that's it. Maybe that was sampled previously to that song, but immediately that's what I thought of.
Well, and it had that like kind of high school marching band, like dom
Yes.
dom 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 to it.
Yeah.
Which I think is so great. And I think that, first of all, yeah, we do have to end up touching on the people that were on this album because it's fucking crazy. But I think when you turn in a song like Sticky, which I really love, that's a song that it's got a great sound, it's got a great beat, it's full of features. It's not necessarily like the most storyline driven one. It's these like really entertaining interludes between songs. Like I have 4 songs highlighted for shouting out in particular, and I can group them together because Sticky is the straw that stirs the drink amidst some of the standout songs for me. Judge Judy, Like Him, and Hey Jane. They're all very, very different. And I think that collection of 4 speaks to the complexity that's all over this, the different musical choices. Like he kind of threads through this with like a very smooth sound. Like you'll have a lot of flute and you'll have a lot of like 3-part harmony. You get Thundercat in there, you immediately identify him. You have Donald Glover doing like little riffs in the background. And you have like these elements that kind of thread through the album and carry you through. And it really is kind of just one big chunk. It's kind of like Prince's Love Sexy, where you're kind of meant to just like listen to the whole thing as you go through. And I love that kind of experience. And you can pick these out individually and, you know, fucking jam to them. But listening to it the first time all the way through, I was like, yeah, yes, absolutely. So like, I don't know. Do you mind if we like drill down into some specific songs in this one?
Oh,
like I
for
know
sure.
that's like the old format of the show, but for this one, I really think I really want to like drill down individually to songs.
Which did you have one you want to start with?
I would love to start with Hey Jane.
Okay. So Hey Jane, probably the most, like, I would say, not even probably, it is the most lyrically dense song on the album, but that comes with also being, I think, the best, I want to say lyrical content, but that's kind of, I guess, in this sort of like storytelling category, it's definitely the best version of that on this album, because there's great lyrics all over this album. But what I loved about Hey Jane is the perspective you take on a situation like this in this song, and understanding, you know, being brutally honest with how you feel about like what has happened, but also understanding the perspective of the other person. You know, I think it is a very, like, this song felt like a therapy session.
He does a really, really good job at making like 2 characters that have distinctive voices, and you buy it. And he's not doing a gimmick. He's not doing a voice. But like, he just kind of switches up the way things are said and the way things are delivered. And it isn't back and forth, but it is like at the same time weirdly conversational. You're getting these 2 like way different anxieties. It's like, you know, she's got a fear. So the whole thing is it's like the pregnancy scare, or not even necessarily a scare, but like a precipice. And he's got all these anxieties about being a father because his dad wasn't around, and he's got this career. It's all of her anxieties of like, my clock is ticking and I think I might want to have this baby and have this baby with you. So what are you thinking? And it's a lot of just like this shared uncertainty. It's a kind of a brutal song without being like intentionally depressing or maudlin in any way. It's just like a very interesting story. Also told through the music, like the rhythm of it kind of has a little bit of a ticking clock element to it. And these interludes where he's like having an anxiety attack. It's a great touch. It's like Billy Strings doing the bong hits to make a beat. But it's one of those, and it's one of the like kind of sloppier moments on the album, not in terms of like the quality of the craft, but it's just that again, it reflects the situation where it's like there's a lot of panic, there's a lot of uncertainty. So the song in a way is kind of like hastily made too. Intentionally. And I think that's one of the things that's so interesting about what's going on in this album as a whole, and then especially this song.
Yeah, I think I didn't realize, I think until the song was almost over the first time, that it was coming from 2 different perspectives, like throughout the song. I think when it got to the end, I was like, wait a second, why are they saying, like, that doesn't make any sense for him to be saying. And then I realized you're getting the other side of the conversation, you know, the other side of the thought process. I love it when rap songs do that. Absolutely love it. So one of my favorite rap songs ever is Damien by DMX. And it's where Damien is kind of like the demon inside of him, and he's arguing with him about how to handle situations and things like that. Obviously, Damien is the devil on the shoulder. You also have like the why am I not thinking of the song with Eminem and Dr. Dre, Guilty Conscience. You know, like that. You have that type of call and response kind of song where you're looking, and it's not about like everybody say heyo and then everybody says heyo. Like it's not like that kind of call and response. It's like a real conversation and a real thing that these people are dealing with. And I feel like when you're in this song in Hey Jane, it feels like you're kind of sitting there invisible, like listening to them, looking back and forth, like watching them talk about this and putting you in that scene like that on an album like this that contains songs that are just kind of party bangers. And then you get this really like heartfelt thing. It's very difficult to deliver on both those styles of music, and especially within the same album. That I think when you look at overall, like Hey Jane compared to a song like Sticky, I feel like that's the most apt way to kind of highlight how diverse this album is, but also it's going to reinforce like the quality of it.
And the different levels to it too, where like something like Sticky is one of the more like thematically vague songs on, you know, it's like got that kind of like industry insider success kind of things going on, and it's not as like intimate and candid as something like Hey Jane is. And like again, there are levels to it. Hey Jane to me is like one of the two most candid songs on the album, again in a like super brutal but interesting way, where Hey Jane takes place as a conversation, and you can't fake that. That's with another person. But you can get something like Sticky, which is just a bunch of people having a fucking party. But then you get something like Judge Judy, which was another personal favorite of mine, because it's like potentially the most brutal song on the album, and you don't think that going in, because it adopts that first person perspective, which is somewhat candid. You're relaying an event, but also you have the opportunity to embellish because there's not another person in the room that can corroborate your side the same way as like if we're looking in on this conversation between them, we're just getting his story. So at first it reminded me of like Darling Nikki. It even has that same beat. Dun 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 dun. So that was my first thought. I was like, oh, this is like Darling Nikki. He's talking about how he got with this girl. And then it very quickly turns into, he's back, ladies and gentlemen, Frank Zappa, Carolina Hardcore Ecstasy, which is a song about like hooking up with a girl with a crushing fetish. Incredibly strange. Because you get into him talking about like all this shit they did, and like not even being cute about it in like a Sabrina Carpenter way, like just straight up telling you the shit that they did. And then for there to be this huge swerve at the end where she was pretty much doing this because she was living out her last days. She had cancer, it spread to her brain. And if you're reading this message right now, I'm dead.
Yeah.
That is a wild fucking trick to pull.
Yeah.
In this fucking song. I'm listening to it. I'm like, oh yeah, this is Darling Nikki. And you get to the end and I'm like, oh Jesus.
Yeah. So this is why I think Tyler, the Creator, needs to be like writing other things than music as well, is to be able to throw down a swerve like that, as you put it, out of nowhere. Like you're thinking you're hearing this song and it's got the kind of tongue in cheek. No, I won't judge Judy. You know, it's got the tongue in cheek and they're talking about some dirty stuff. And then all of a sudden, oh, she's dead.
Yeah.
Just out of nowhere, you know? And I think that is the kind of moments in music, like, and obviously this is a first for me of having this particular subject matter be used, you know what I mean? But the kind of moments in music that stop you in your tracks, that you're like, what did I just listen to? And it makes you go back and listen to it again. I think when I realized on God, why can't I remember no names of songs of Hey Jane, when I realized it was two different people, I was like, whoa. And it brought an entire new layer to that at the end of this song. When it's She Dead, brought a whole new layer to it. I was like, why did we just go through all this super descriptive stuff just for like the little blurb at the end? You know, it's like over the credits when they're talking about what happened to all the characters in like a, you know, kind of a historical fiction movie. And it's like so and so went on to own a business and blah blah blah. It's like, well, this lady died.
Yeah.
Like you just started read about her doing all sorts of stuff, and now she's dead.
She died in
Yeah.
1992. And if it sounds like we're not like talking about the music itself a lot, there are certain moments like in Like Him, I think that's which is another one of my favorite songs on here and like
Mhm.
really ties the four that I keyed in on together. Song about his dad, and it's got this like smooth music, quiet storm R&B kind of vibe going through it. It's very tender, and it's got this kind of like aggressive rap veneer to it in certain instances. It's kind of a confused song, and again, another sloppy one because it's dealing with straight up emotion, just like Hey Jane is. The twist here comes in the form of his dad, for shoot in real life, has been absent his whole life. He knows nothing about him, turned him into like the biggest villain in his creative output, this deadbeat absentee dad, for his mother to then reveal he wanted to be in your life. I didn't let him, and I hope you
Mhm.
can forgive me. Pretty fucking crazy to disclose that. It's one of two things, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy to disclose that on an album, and it's pretty fucked up to lie about it to make a good album. I choose to believe this is actually what happened,
Yeah.
and he's disclosing this to us, and it's a mind fuck. The biggest, it's literally Darth Vader, I am your father.
Yeah. I couldn't believe that when I listened to the end of that song when she's on there, like I guess it was a voicemail or something like that. But my God, like what that must have been like to have talked all this shit. So now if he goes and has a relationship and it's like, oh, I'm gonna listen to your old music, and he's bopping along, and then all of a sudden he's like, hey, was that about me? You said that about me? You don't even know me, you know? And to put that, I wonder if that was like the punishment of her lying, and he's like, well, okay, this is how we make it even, is I'm gonna put it on an album that millions and millions of people are gonna listen to.
Go on, mother. Take your
Yeah,
lumps.
yeah. I mean, just I feel like, I know the point of art, right, is to kind of encapsulate human expression and create, bridges between us with emotions, feelings, whatever it might be. That's the point of art, is to convey how I'm feeling in order to maybe connect with somebody that's feeling the same, or make it okay that other people feel the same. There's reasons for it. To be so forthcoming with something that is clearly very personal, and something like not just about you, because what he said about his father, he, like, if that's how he felt and that's what he knew to be true, whether it was actually true or not, that's fair for him to have those feelings and express them in the art. But then he is putting his mom on blast, unless it's like you said, something awful, and that he completely made it all up for the for the gram. But I would like to think it's true, because I don't, of what I know about him, I don't think he's the kind of person that would farm karma like that.
We have no reason to believe it's not
Yeah.
true. When I introduced the possibility of this is a fucked up thing he made up, it's twofold, because I can see him, the prankish side of him, kind of having that instinct, but it would be a fucked up thing to try to like pull a prank on in an album that I think you can look at something like Hey Jane and say, did that really happen? And if it did, obviously, no kid resulted from it. Cause that was the first thing I looked up. I'm like, does
Mhm.
he have a fucking kid now? No kid. So that's a really vulnerable thing that if that one, it's more vague to me whether or not that actually happened, but you get something like him, you get something like him, and it's just like so insanely vulnerable. And I don't mean to be woo woo, but I feel like it had to be pretty healing for him and his mom for her to be able to do that on the album. Like she would have had every right to be like, I'm not going to do that. I'm
Mhm.
not going to talk about it. Get an actress to do it or something. I'm not going to do it. But you have to give credit to Bonita Smith, because all of her advice is running all through this thing. It's her little boy, and the advice she gave him while he's turning into a grown-ass man, and it probably a little delayed. It's one of those like weird split the difference thing where you blow up at a young age, so there's kind of an arrested development, but at the same time you're in the entertainment industry, so there's sort of a quantum leap in like the things you're supposed to handle and the way you're supposed to handle them. So you grow up a ton, but you don't necessarily mature all at once. And I think that's the balance this album hits musically, lyrically, and just where he's at in his life. Grown up, but not necessarily mature. And now these two things are kind of starting to meet. They're both kind of sinking in, because you get this song Like Him. It's very personal. It's very vulnerable. And just like legitimately kind of heartbreaking in the parts where he just like sounds like a kid, where it's like, do I look like him? Like it's one of my more favorite songs on the album, on an album where it's hard to deny something like Sticky or Judge Judy. Take Your Mask Off is wonderful. Sticky is the most like pure, like full throttle to the bottle, like rock, kind of like rocking rap you're going to get on this. But for me, something like Him was the synthesis of this whole album. Is he finally mature enough to have kids? Does he even want them? He straight up admits in one of these songs, Darling I, where he's like, it's more fulfilling for me at this point in my life to be really good at music and have fun making it and get accolades for it than it is to be in a relationship. I understand that that's kind of like precluding me from finding happiness with someone, but I find happiness in the music, and that's all right.
Yeah. And I think that's a healthy way to look at it. If you're like, this is where I want my fulfillment from right now. But I have a question for you, Alex. I have a question. Would you say that Like Him is our generation's A Boy Named Sue?
I don't know. Yeah, A Boy Named Sue. I could see that.
It wasn't like too serious of a question, but it really made me think. Is it like a Cat's Cradle? I think it's in that lineup of, he's done all these things, but there's also a big old thumbprint of him on me. Whether they're around or not, whatever, maybe they were around too much. Maybe they did too much. There's a lot of different ways that relationship can get fractured, and I think anytime you're able to like truly honestly explore that, and then to have the dagger of the mom like admitting to all that and being like, I kept him away. And then it seems like, I would assume that him putting his mom on the album means he's forgiven her for that, or at least it's not a total deal breaker in their relationship. So it shows another side of maturity there. Maybe he's getting a little bit of a shot at Asher by putting it on the goddamn album, but it might be that he's like, okay, this is the way, the hand I'm dealt now. So instead of, blowing everything up about it, I can just work with what I've got now.
And the thing is, like, having his mom and her advice threaded through this whole thing, they make for these wonderful interludes, giving highly practical advice, like always wear a condom, which is then followed by a song that I think the implication is it ends in an abortion, and a lot of like uncertainty about whether or not that's the road to go down, or do we have this kid?
I think when you say something like, I'm okay with whatever you want to do, I think the implication is like, please get an abortion. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to say buy it on this album. I think this was absolutely fantastic. Another in the line of, Call Me If You Get Lost was fantastic. Igor was fantastic. I think Tyler, the Creator's on a heater right now, and hopefully he continues to do so. Whatever creative endeavor he feels like doing, I feel like he'll just knock out of the parks, whether it's music or movies, whatever it might be. I hope he does whatever his little heart desires.
Hardcore buy it from me. Should go without saying. I like the weird stuff. And we didn't even end up really like talking about one of the main things kind of literally on the cover of the album and running through it, Saint Chromia. And that kind of character, it's like the performative Tyler, the Creator. And again, I always feel like pretentious and woo-woo talking about it, but it is right there. I'm just translating it. This isn't like my theory. This is right there. Like, that's the mask, that's the character. And like, you have the song Take Your Mask Off, which has like all those different, it's kind of the anti, well, then you really might know what it's like. Married with a kid named Tom, said he was in love. Like, it's way different than the Everclear song in the sense that it's got all these different perspectives that it fits in. Him, depressed housewife, gay pastor. I hope someday you can take your mask off. That's a whole thing that's running through this whole album. I just wanted to make sure that like we pay homage to that aspect of it as well, because that's kind of the war, is like Tyler, the Creator, the guy, Saint Chromia, the like alter ego standing in for Tyler, the Creator, the professional creative persona, you know, what he's been giving us this whole time. And he kind of does take the mask off, as like hokey as that can sound. If it's hokey of me to say, it was hokey of him to do. I'm not going to keep apologizing for this. But it's a multi-layered album. It's a meta album, but like barely even, because it's just like straight up candid and personal and intimate like that. And the music is great. And again, something like Sticky, you can just get down to it and have fun. Something like Judge Judy is a fucked up exercise. Hey Jane is a crazy story. Like Him, it's kind of the moment that ties up all the themes and sends them home. It's absolutely wild that the guy that was on Loiter Squad playing a cop that couldn't stop farting or whatever happens on Loiter Squad. Watched it a handful of times. Great stuff. But that guy made an album like this. We talk about the annual awards are coming up. There's been some competitions heating up at the end of the year.
There's been some late entries on the board this year. And I was looking through the list of albums. I think we got some tough choices this year.
We're gonna have some tough choices to make at the end of this year.
Yeah. Well, where can folks find that episode when it eventually comes out, Alex?
I ain't going to beat around the bush. YouTube.com/C/out on that line. Folks, every week we sit here and we feel like we have to hammer this into your heads, but we really shouldn't. Like, this album was about maturity and growing up. And quite frankly, you need to do both. You need to mature. You need to grow up. You need to stop making grown men beg. Okay? Get over yourself. Subscribe. Turn the notifications on. Make sure you leave comments in the videos. Make sure you leave us thumbs up. Really, just the comments, though. Those seem to be the most helpful thing, is subscribers and comments. Okay?
And folks, if you like this video and subscribe, leave us a comment saying you did so, and I will send you pictures of my dogs. This and there's 3 others.
You can't afford, at those prices, you can't afford not to go, folks. And I promise that if you subscribe and you like this video and you leave a comment, I won't hurt those dogs.